Hi teachers, in this video we are going to take a look specifically at Google Classroom notifications. One of the challenges I've heard from teachers about migrating everything to Google is the fact that Google Classroom notifications kind of create a mess of your inbox. So there's a couple of things you can do to help you better manage all of this and be able to sort your emails so that you don't have everything coming into one large place. To get started, we're first going to open up Google Classroom, and on the left-hand side of Google Classroom, scroll all the way to the bottom until you see the settings. We want to start here because we want to manage some of our notifications and toggle off a few that we may not end up needing just to keep some of that mess out of our inbox. So we're first going to take a look at the overarching options that you have. Comments are probably very important for you to get in all aspects so that you can keep on top of when students are trying to reach out to you or commenting on something not working or maybe having a question. So you may want to have all these turned on. In terms of classes you're enrolled in, this would be classes where you are the student. Perhaps I am running a course and you're the student there, or perhaps Dr. Keenan is running a course or your principal. You may not need to see everything in this course. You may want to turn off some of these notifications, knowing that you can always go to that course and see those updates at any point. Just keep in mind, if you turn these off, it's not applying to just one class you're enrolled in, it applies to all classes you're enrolled in. But for example, you may not need to see every time there's work and other posts from teachers, or maybe the return work is not as big of a deal. Invitations to join classes, you can always find those on your Google Classroom dashboard, which is when you click the three lines and select classes. Here's where you'll see your classes and you'll see those invites there. So you don't need to have them in your email in order to get to them. And then lastly, due date reminders for your work. My guess is if you're enrolled in classes, those due dates are a little bit more flexible when you are the student in the class. Now, scrolling down to classes you teach. One of the settings here that I do recommend considering turning off, but every teacher is different, is the schedule post published or failed. So this can get a little messy because every time I post something, I get an email about it. I don't necessarily need to see an email every time I post something or I schedule something to post. I do want to know if it failed, but if I'm currently teaching the class, I might be able to see that directly from students. Also, the invitation to co-teach classes, I don't need that necessarily every time. Again, I can go to that dashboard, click on classes, and I can see those invitations right here and accept them at any time. I do hear from a lot of teachers keeping on the late submissions, and the resubmissions are important. Now let's take a look at the by class option. If you have any classes that you are perhaps not the major teacher on, maybe you are a teacher on a gym class, but you don't actually teach gym, you may want to just toggle off those notifications altogether so that they are not cluttering up your inbox either. The more things that you can manage from this, the better off you will be. If you're an administrator and notifications aren't needed to your inbox at all, you may want to toggle them off altogether. But note that I do keep some of mine on just because I need things when I'm interacting with staff in Google Classroom as well. Now we're going to hop on over to Gmail to actually look at how we can filter some of these numerous notifications coming direct from Google Classroom. To get started, we are going to create a label to hold all of these things. Now, I may want to create a label for each classroom or just create one generic label called Google Classroom. I'm going to select Create New Label on the left-hand side. It's underneath the More section. And I'm going to create this one. I don't want to nest it underneath anything at this time, but you do have that option to kind of keep all the Google Classroom things together if you so choose. I'm going to click create and I notice that I have this label here called Google Classroom Test. Now I'm ready to take a look at some of those emails coming from Google Classroom. If I click on one of those emails coming from Google Classroom, I know that this is in my Let's Get Learning classroom, and I can see this particular email address right here. This email address is unique to this Google Classroom. So each Google Classroom has its own email address, which is why you can filter each Google Classroom to a separate label, or you can keep them all going to the same label. I want to take and filter this particular email real easily to this Google Classroom test. To do this, I'm going to click the three dots above the email and select filter messages like these. It pulls up that email address automatically. I can search to see which emails are going to be impacted, or if I know that this is already what I want, I'm going to select create filter. I want to skip these from the inbox because I don't want them to be cluttering up my inbox. It is going to archive it, but keep in mind, archive which email is still completely accessible. And then I want to apply the label Google Classroom test. I can also apply this to any current matching conversations that are there. Now, this is only picking up one because I've cleaned out this inbox rather significantly. I'm going to select create filter. And now if I click on this, that email is right here. So notice that I can then create another filter if I had another email coming from a different Google Classroom and I wanted it to go to the same folder. I could click on that email, select the three dots, filter messages like these. This is obviously not what I want to filter, but make sure that it's pulling that, and then I can click to create the filter for that particular message. Now, heading back up to my filters, I want to add another layer to this. And if you need any support on this, don't hesitate to reach out. So, what if I have some more important Google Classroom emails as opposed to others? For example, as a teacher, I always thought that the ones that came through that said private comment, those are rather important because typically a student was reaching out directly to me with a question. Maybe I want those to go to a little bit different of a place than just the generic Google Classroom folder. So I'm going to create another label, select more, create a new label, private comments. I'm going to nest this under just my Google Classroom section. So I have underneath Google Classroom this private comments label. And what I want to do is I want to take one of these emails just to get started. I'm going to filter messages like these. I'm seeing that it's pulling that specific email address. But under the has the words, I want to type in private comment. And I'm going to search real quick just to make sure that it returns the correct emails. So it is returning the correct emails that I want. I'm going to click the filter button again at the top and see that I am getting all emails that are coming from this email address and have the words private comment in them. There is a chance that if somehow, some way, you've got the words private comment written in something else from Google Classroom, you may get a couple of other things there, but for the most part, it's going to filter in all the things that you're looking for. I'm going to select create filter and I'm going to skip again. I want to apply the label Google Classroom private comments, and I'm going to apply this to that and select create. Now, when I go underneath Google Classroom and go into Google Classroom private comments, I find that email here and I can easily go through these to respond to those students and keep on top of that. Another thing that I can do to make this even more noticeable is underneath a specific label called private comments, I'm going to click the three dots, and I do have the option to make sure that it's shown in the message list or hidden, but I may want to take and only show it if there's an unread message. So notice, because this is a nested label, I have to go up to the top part of the nest, but if I choose show if unread, this label is only going to pop up above the more section if there's unread emails in it. That can help me easily target and know that I need to check in with those particular students for those questions or private comments coming through. Now, if there's other things that come through in Google Classroom that have unique words to them, maybe comment or something else that the students are writing, you want to take a look at the email, notice anything specific that stands out across all of those emails, and then create a filter using has the words or perhaps subject or even doesn't has. Keep in mind, if you use something with subject, it does need to match exactly here, and each subject is probably going to be different. So you want to create something that's going to be pulling all of those emails as opposed to just one single email at a time. Again, if you have questions, this can get a little bit into the weeds, but I will happily help you out so that you can manage some of the craziness with notifications in your inbox.